Hi, I'm Bonita and I am early retired. I'm not old enough yet for Social Security. I'm living on a low income and I am living off of savings. And right now, I'm spending the winter in my RV in the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas. I normally live in Kansas. I have frugal videos all year round, and I hope that you will join me this year in 2025 as we share ways to save money and live our dreams. I think if we all would put what we did each week in a video, it might sound a lot more interesting. I know that I share with you what I do on a weekly basis, and I really enjoy doing that because it puts my life in perspective. I realize that I am living a full life on very little money, and yet I'm doing everything that I want to do. And sharing that helps me see that it's possible, and I hope it does for you too. So I'm going to share a couple of little clips of things that I did this week. I went to the Legion with my in laws for my $12 dinner this month. My husband and my father in law are both veterans, and my father in law and mother in law go here every 2 weeks, but I've just been budgeting for once a month. And as you can see, that is a really nice dinner for $12. And going out to a restaurant costs at least that, probably more. And we are supporting the American Legion, and it's also a really nice meal. It's hot, it's fresh, and I think it's pretty big portions. So I really enjoyed that. Then we went to the Irish Fest, and it was cold and rainy, but we got out anyway. The Irish Fest was free, and it's something they do every year because McAllen, Texas was founded by an Irish settler. So I learned something new. So I hope you enjoyed that little clip. Now let's talk more about frugal living this week. This week I made some homemade blueberry muffins, and I made them out of my first Depression era cookbook, and they turned out wonderfully. I had some milk, as they call it, had blinked just a little bit. It was a little bit off, but you can still cook with that. There's no reason to pour it down the drain. So I used it in my baking for these muffins, and they were superb. What I love about that homemade muffin recipe is it's really hard to mess it up. I had sugar, but I have it in the trunk of my car just to make sure I don't draw any ants into the camper. And so I had some brown sugar in the fridge, and I just increased the brown sugar and substituted for the white sugar because I didn't want to get out in the cold and the rain and go get my sugar. I was being lazy. And then I had some frozen blueberries, so I just threw them in and made some brown sugar blueberry muffins. And I have changed up that recipe so many times. It always comes out fine, no matter how you decide to make it or what type of muffin you decide to make it. But don't cry over spilled milk. Isn't that an old saying? Because you can take that milk that's a little bit off and you can make pancakes, waffles, crepes, muffins, cakes, just about any type of baking. You can use some milk that is just a little bit going bad and mix it into any of that. It won't make you sick. You can use up what you have, and you don't have to pour it down the drain. There are so many things that we can use to cook with rather than throwing it out. I had some older sour cream. It was starting to separate. I made one of those cream corn bread casseroles. It came out fine. You can take your yogurt that's just a little bit old and incorporate it into your recipes. I used applesauce in that muffin recipe in the place of oil, and my applesauce was older. You can use older cheeses and grate them into cheese sauces. You can take your wilty vegetables and mix them into stir fries. You can use so many of these things that a lot of us just look at it and say it's not at its best, and I'm just going to toss it out. Squishy potatoes that have not gotten bad and maybe are just wrinkly, you can peel those up and make great scallop potatoes or potato soup or throw them into a stew. Older apples that are like those potatoes that are starting to get wrinkly, just peel them and core them, slice them, add a little bit of sugar, butter, and cinnamon, and you can bake those and have some delicious baked apples or add a crisp to the top or put them in a pie. There's so many ways we can use up these things rather than toss them when they're not at their best. We all know we can take older bread and go ahead and make it into breadcrumbs or make it into croutons or take those older bananas because they make the best banana bread. So before you throw something out, think about, does it have a way that I can go ahead and use it up to keep myself from throwing out the money that I paid for it? And of course, just as a disclaimer, I'm not telling anyone to eat anything that they don't think looks right. Follow your instincts. If it smells funny, tastes funny, looks funny, or it clearly has gone bad, don't eat it. But some of these things that are just past their prime are still usable. We are so scared these days of using anything that doesn't look perfect. And many times we throw things out when they're not perfect. I have saved so much food and it has saved me so much money just by using things that weren't perfect looking. When I grew up, we picked up the apples off the ground. We picked out the bad spots and we still preserved those and cooked with those. Nowadays, you would never pick up apples off of the ground if they had a bad spot, or even choose to buy something in the store that didn't look perfect. We have gotten very used to only using perfect foods. But growing up on the farm, there were lots of things that we would cut down or shred off or cut the holes out of and use anyway because food was food. It was grown, it was important, it was worth saving, and that's how we looked at it. Now everything is so disposable, even our food, and we would rather toss something if it didn't look perfect than figure out if it really was bad and it was something that we needed to throw out. So baking with some of these things, like the milk that tastes just a little bit off that morning when you get up, can be used and you don't have to toss it. The FDA estimates that between 30 to 40% of food is wasted between retail and consumers. And they have the goal to reduce this food waste by 50% by 2030. They just finished a comment session that they will be reviewing from the public that has to do with use by, best by, and sell by dates. And they want to look at changing the verbiage on foods because it is confusing to consumers, and a lot of those dates are being used as reasons to toss food. Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. I had to stop and turn on some lights. It's starting to get dark and I'm not finished with this video. But when we talk about that 30 to 40% of food waste every single year, that equals out to $20 worth of food per person per month, or $165 billion in food waste in America per year. And some of that includes foods that look less than perfect. And that is off the FDA site. They also say that up to 20% of that food waste may be a result from a misunderstanding of what phrases on product date labels mean, along with uncertainty about storage of perishable foods. Confusion over the date labeling can equal 20% of that, and that's why they're looking at trying to change the sell by, best by, use by dates on foods. The FDA even states that according to federal law and regulation, no dates are even required on foods except for infant formula. I know even in the past, when I went through my cabinets and had some stuff that was so old that I didn't feel comfortable using it anymore, back when I still bought some things that were convenience foods in boxes, I still went through and I salvaged like the pasta or the rice that was in there, and I just threw away like the seasoning packets because maybe they had gotten hard. I tried to save things that I knew had product in there that had long term storage things like the pasta and the rice, and I knew they would still be okay. So I just transferred that part of the product into a jar and I saved it, and then I used it again in another dish. And that's a way that if you don't feel comfortable using things that are beyond the date, maybe you can salvage parts of them and help your budget just a bit. So I hope this video has been inspiring to you to maybe take a second look at some of those things, see if you can use them in another way rather than their fresh way before you toss them. And I hope that I will see you in the next video. Please give me a thumbs up, and I hope to see you soon.